Dr. Tim Machan. Super excited to have Dr. Tim Machan with us today. He has such a wide breadth of expertise. Little known fact, was the very first employee at True Sports Physical Therapy. He impressed me so much then, very early on, and then to watch where he's gone throughout his career has been fascinating and exciting and super cool. He is also the only employee, other than myself, at True Sports Physical Therapy to have worn a yarmulke to work.
Oh yeah, for Halloween.
For Halloween. For Halloween, yes. Great costume. So Tim, you just asked a really good question about what our goal is with this podcast, and we'll get to that in a heartbeat. But first, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience of sports physical therapists, and that's exactly what we're talking to. That's exactly who we're talking to. So tell us about how you got to where you are, and all the interesting turns that took you to where you are.
Sure. It has been a unique journey to say the least. So I think what turned me on to sports and I guess physical therapy in general was my background as an athlete. I was never the greatest, but I loved sports, and I grew up being very passionate about playing sports, watching sports, being around sports. I had the opportunity to play football at the Division III level, and I actually started college as a physics major. I don't know if you remember this story.
Go ahead, share it.
So I started as a physics major because I liked physics in high school, and it was like, what do you major in college? Well, whatever you like. Yeah. So that's what I started as, and I made it to the third semester, where I had to take quantum physics. And I had that class was really hard. And then I had this existential crisis of what am I going to do with a physics degree? Ultimately, the pathway for that in my future wasn't something that interested me that much. And so I kind of pivoted and came across physical therapy and the idea of sports physical therapy. And that's where, obviously everything really took off. So coming out of school,
and this is WashU.
Yeah. So I was at Division III school, Washington University in St. Louis. Coming out of undergrad, I got into WashU's PT program. So started there, and I kind of hit a skid, and I hit this moment of there weren't a lot of sports opportunities. Kind of what I won't say what I promised, but what I envisioned. Yeah. When I made the choice, didn't really seem that attainable with kind of what was being offered in clinicals and kind of job prospects and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden I heard about residencies, and that became my focus. It was like, all right, this is it. This is how I'm going to go on to the next step. And so I was fortunate to do the sports residency at the University of Cincinnati, where I worked with some great physical therapists, Bob Mangine and Joe Rausch. I learned a ton from them. I got to spend a year working with the football team and the baseball team. Great opportunity. And then I hit the peak of my career, which is when I got introduced to Yoni. And I was trying to remember this story, how we got connected. Yeah. So I was at my fraternity's alumni weekend.
Love it.
And met a guy whose dad was on the board at one of the high schools. Yep. And he knew you. Yeah. And that's how we got connected. And
that's pretty good. The rest was history. It's pretty good. I forgot about that, the alumni piece. I remember that the AD at the Gilman School was like, I heard about this guy. He did a residency, and I'm like, what's a residency? And she's like, I think it's something that's going to make him a great hire. And so you did. You came in and interviewed. I think we talked on the phone first, and then you came in and interviewed. And I quote the story of that interview all the time because I was blown away at your ability. Your ability's 1 year out. I remember coming out of school and not knowing what the hell I was doing for the first years. And I hope none of my patients are listening, but it takes you a really long time to get decent at this thing, I think. But you really jump started. I just felt like you were light years ahead of where I was, certainly at that point in your career, only being a year out, right? And I felt like, holy cow, like residency must be unbelievable. And so that really opened my eyes to residency. So we'll come back to residency. I want to hear more about your fascinating journey, because one of the highlights that are gonna come out of this are the things that you can do with this doctorate degree. And you are like Forrest Gump in the physical therapy world. You're just like everywhere fascinating. So, okay, you come into True Sports. You sit through that interview process. You impress me enough. You get your first gig, right?
Right.
And then you're with me for a few years. Anything that stands out of the outpatient sports model that you want to share? Things you liked, things you didn't love necessarily?
So, yeah, and kind of thinking back on that, I think one of the coolest opportunities of particularly working for a practice, and I don't know, maybe you're too big for this kind of thing now. You're not too big. But like you were looking for any opportunity to I guess grow the business, and so I was able to reach out through a connection with a local FCS university, Morgan State, and just kind of start working in their training room. You know, we set up an arrangement, and that was an amazing opportunity to continue to do some of the training room stuff that I had learned. But also, you know, I kept that normal clinic lifestyle, and I could bring some of those athletes into, you know, True Sports and get some more individualized care in that setting. So I really liked that aspect of it.
Sure.
I certainly liked the model that I'm taking for it.
It was It was two dudes in a church, you know?
It was. I still think about like answering my phone. The Google Voice number calls, and I'm taking phone calls. You're not even paying for my health insurance, much less my cell phone. I'm answering the work line.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
So, yeah, I think the opportunities that afforded us, you know, to work individually with people,
sure.
And build the connection that way. And I think that's one of the things that's I'll say different about the university setting or a team setting than the outpatient setting is you just don't have as much contact. You don't have as much of that time that you spend with people. So having the setup that we did where, you know, it was that one-on-one care, you really connected with the patient. And I think I'm a big believer that motivation is what leads to success. If you can get the person to buy in that you have a plan for them, you're listening to them, and you're going to help them, your outcome is going to be successful. What specifically you do, I mean, the evidence is saying it probably doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But if you connect with the person, then you're going to get the outcome that you're looking for. And so that's one of the things that I really liked about particularly the way True Sports was set up, you know, kind of a unique part of the outpatient world.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So after True Sports, I mean, then you hockey stick straight up. So tell us where you went and how long you were there and really just what you loved about each place because they're so unique.
Yeah, so it was really cool. You know, I found an opportunity to work for Exos as a contractor with Special Forces. And it's a program called Thor 3, which stands for Tactical Human Optimization Rapid Reconditioning Rehabilitation. I'm not sure if those are the right R's,
but
the
R3.
Yeah, the 3 R's. And it's basically it's implementing the Division I sports or the professional sports model for Special Forces soldiers. It's across all the branches of the military. Thor is Army specific. And so I went down to Fort Bragg in North Carolina and worked as a contractor with psychological operations, which was just a fascinating program to be a part of. You know, we had a big performance gym, strength coaches, PT, dietitian, kind of all working that multidisciplinary model, working together, and it bridged the gap between like a training room team environment and outpatient, you know, kind of a structured schedule, but I'm always there and I'm not hampered by the limits of insurance or cost.
Everything. That's so cool. So, what did you learn from those other disciplines that you wouldn't have gotten elsewhere and that you took with you?
Hands down, this was one of the pillars of my professional development. Was meeting a guy named Jesse Miller is a strength coach that I worked with at Thor 3 at Fort Bragg. And I learned so much about weight training in a way that like I never understood. You know, I had a background as an athlete. I trained through high school and through college. I did all of those movements, but it wasn't until I'd sit down with Jesse at lunch and we'd talk about like, what is the goal of this movement? What are you trying to do? And then actually he ended up coaching me on some of those things. Mm-hmm. And that's where it like everything clicked and really came together about what is producing force through your hips? How does a hinge progress into, something like a kettlebell swing into a hang clean, like how the spectrum, and how as rehab specialists, it's not, it depends on your setting, but it's not necessarily our job to be the strength coach. Mm-hmm. But I've always felt and been fortunate in most of the jobs where I've had good strength coaches to work with. Mm-hmm. I need to get the athlete ready to be with the strength coach. So I've got to understand what that end of the spectrum looks like really well, or I'm not going to adequately prepare them to do that, to hinge through their hips, to bend, to do all of those things that they need to be able to do. So that part was, talking about multidisciplinary development, hands down, one of the best things that I got out of there. But then I also think like working with the dietitian and the mindset that profession brings in terms of what else can you be considering, vitamin D, when you're dealing with some of those stress injuries, those bone injuries, what about these other considerations? And not necessarily in our scope, but being able to communicate with other professions where it is and saying, what do you think about this? I think both of those were really, really beneficial.
That's super cool. And I can imagine that it preps you for, it's certainly the way we have it in Maryland. And now, we're starting to get up towards Pennsylvania and we see it there too, although maybe to a lesser extent, but it's that direct access that creates us becoming almost like the quarterback of the whole thing, right? Because they have a musculoskeletal injury. They come in, they see Tim Machan. Well, maybe you're thinking about a referral to a dietitian. Maybe you're thinking about a referral to a strength coach. So I'm sure that's super valuable. A couple of questions that come out of that. Number one, how did you get that job? So people are listening. They're like, oh my God, that sounds unbelievable. I want to work at Thor 3. How do I become the next Tim Machan?
So this is kind of the next step in the long line of, I feel like I've been more lucky than good in my career and fortunate in, just like the serendipitous situation that led you and me together. Mm-hmm. This situation was also fairly lucky. I was looking, not anything against True Sports, but I was looking to leave Baltimore, where my life was headed. I was going to move somewhere else. And I was looking for that next opportunity. And I had these, big visions, everything I had learned from you. And, I was continuing to build my practice. I was ready for something big. Mm-hmm. And I was just looking for jobs at well-known places. And Exos is one of those companies that, I had heard about. And they were posting not for any their sports jobs, but for this military position. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'll give them my resume and they'll think I'm so brilliant that they'll make up a job for me, which wasn't the case. But, I took the interview for Fort Bragg and was really impressed by that program. So I don't believe Exos is a contractor for that program anymore. It's called POTIF, Preservation of the Force and Family. It's a congressional program, but there are other contracting companies. So if you are interested in the military side, I believe KBR is the big one right now. But looking up those military contracting jobs, and it's more than just the special forces. They're expanding rapidly in what they're trying to provide in military medicine because those hospitals are just so overflowing with patients. Mm-hmm. They've started to kind of privatize it and bring in contractors to get more access.
Super cool. Okay, so that's really great information. You go from Thor 3 to?
So just kind of a shift at Thor 3. So I left Fort Bragg and I went to Fort Campbell.
Okay.
Moved from psychological operations to 5th Group, which is Green Berets, special for like the door kickers and a really just another cool population to work with. Slightly different demands for their job. Similar resources. We did have an athletic trainer there as well as a sports psych. So the program got a little bit bigger. Yeah, I was there. That's just outside of Nashville, there for a short period, and then had an opportunity to go back to Cincinnati. So from having been there previously,
right.
I kept contact with Aaron Himmler, who's, a good friend, and he's the head athletic trainer for football now and doing great things up there with the Bearcats. And he reached out and said, we're looking to kind of redevelop the PT role in the training room. We want to expand it a little bit. We want to bring the residency program back. It had actually kind of fallen apart after
Tim,
I left.
That's what happens.
And so, kind of on a short notice, left Fort Campbell and drove up to Baltimore, or not to Baltimore, to Cincinnati.
I wish to Baltimore. So, tell these guys that you were around, psychological warfare. For who are they?
So, psychological operations.
Okay.
And so they're doing. Boy, gotta probably be careful on this because I did need to have secret clearance for the job. But I mean, anything that you could read on the internet would certainly be fine. So they're doing more of the work within the communities, trying to build. They're trying to build a message and do those types of things.
Are these guys are sitting at desks?
A little bit of a mix. So yeah, there are deployments. They do go out downrange, and there are positions that are more kind of data-driven, computer-based. If any of them were to ever listen to this, they'd probably
kill you.
Just for how I'm butchering the explanation.
Okay, but it sounds like a different type of athlete than Green Berets.
Yeah. Yes and no. Like there are certainly positions within psychological operations where they're part of a team. They're deploying with those individuals. They've got to do the exact same thing.
Gotcha.
There were some of those.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I mean, what a cool way to practice physical therapy. The interaction, the story that was shared that most sticks out in your mind from your time with the Green Berets is what? I have to imagine that a couple guys are sitting on the table and sharing something where you're like, I'm glad you're on my side.
So I had one really interesting kind of case. I don't know that this is exactly like that much of a story, but it was a guy who had previously been in a vehicle that was hit by an IED, and this is like years before I was working with him. And he had developed kind of late onset this hip pain, and got some imaging. It's one of the cool things, and you talked about direct access. One of the really cool things about the military is the ability to order imaging, and I learned a ton just out of necessity. Like I had to do Con Ed stuff to learn how to order imaging, to be able to do that safely and appropriately. But he had an X-ray that showed just this gnarly, heterotropic ossification. He's got this like claw in his glute. And it was just like a really interesting, totally different case. I'd never seen anything like it. And he's got this massive bone growth in the muscle. And the management was essentially like, just keep going.
Yeah, it's great.
There are options like surgically remove, but everyone, it's mixed in terms of the outcomes for that. And, a totally different pathology that I never had experience with, other than maybe in a textbook or studying for something, a one-off, but to actually see it and like help manage it was a really interesting, story.
Yeah, and it sounds like such an awesome use of your skill set. Like, what are we? We're problem solvers. We're teachers. And what a cool way to just like think about something you never thought you would see and work your way through it. That's super interesting. So now you go back, and so you went to Cincy, and then you go straight from Cincy to the Rutgers,
to Rutgers,
Rutgers University. And tell me about your path there.
So Cincinnati was great, and I absolutely loved getting to be back there and working with that staff. They're phenomenal, brilliant group. And I had the opportunity to kind of restart that residency program, which was really important to me. It was something I think residency for the right people is super valuable, and I wanted to be part of that process because of how important it was for me. So I really liked the residency, and then I had the opportunity to work with all of the athletes at the University of Cincinnati. So I learned a ton about the spectrum. I fortunately had a good background with lacrosse athletes from our time together.
Oh, yeah.
I had a good background with football, but all of a sudden starting to work with some of these other athletes and different pathologies, just kind of continue to develop, continue to grow, continue to learn. And I really thought I was going to be in Cincinnati for a while. And I kind of joked about this. I've stopped making plans.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, whatever's going to be best will show itself. And so I was really enjoying my time in Cincinnati.
Don't get all religious on us. Tim. Jesus. Okay.
And then, I had a phone call from a friend of mine, and he's like, hey, he had been working at Rutgers. He's like, hey, I need to leave. I need to step away from athletics for some family reasons. Do you know anybody who would be a good fit for my job? And so just happened, my fiance was at Rutgers doing fellowship for orthopedic surgery. And we were trying to figure out what our next move was. So this is February of 2021, and she finishes fellowship that summer. We're getting married that summer, and we've got to figure out what is the next move. And so, I was like, oh, kind of explain it to me. Let me see if I know who would be a good fit. And then I talked it over with my wife, or now wife, Emily, and all of a sudden it seemed like a good opportunity. She was developing a network out here. She was developing connections. So she was able to find a job out here in the Northeast, kind of the New York metro area. I was able to stay in high-level college athletics. And most importantly, we were able to live together and kind of bring that part of our life back into union.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. I hope she's listening.
So I am an ordained minister. If you need anybody who needs someone for a wedding,
clear. And how can we get in touch with you for those needs? That's really awesome. And so you come on, and you're head of PT for the athletic department?
Yeah.
Okay.
For football. So it was a move from kind of all sports to specifically football, and a change also in that it was very much more of like a staff position. Whereas at Cincinnati, I wasn't really tied to any one team. Now it was, you're at practices, you're traveling, you're doing all of those things again that I had done as a resident, but hadn't really done since that time.
Love it. And, from what I saw in the Morgan State athletic training room, it's great for you. It's so perfect for you. And now you have a new role there, right? Yeah.
So, things have gone well, and we've started kind of branching and growing some of the sports science initiatives that we're doing and collaborating amongst like sports medicine and strength and conditioning and nutrition. And we've grown the department, and I've been able to kind of take on a role doing a little bit more of that collaboration side of things.
That's super awesome. And so it's great to talk to people that are at this level of sports PT and athletics. I think the awesome stuff is like stuff that I always dreamt about, which was you're working with unbelievable athletes. I mean, just to see the size and speed and skill of these humans, it still amazes me when I come into contact with it, certainly. So I'm sure that's a positive. You get the thrill of competition, right? I think sometimes that goes away, or it's hard to find that. And I think you become a piece of that squad and that team, and so you can celebrate the victories and feel the losses, et cetera, and camaraderie. What are the biggest struggles? Like, what's the downside of this?
Yeah. No, I mean, you highlighted a lot of the fun things. I would say, one of the struggles that you run into that seems counterintuitive is time. Because, it seems like, okay, we've got unfettered access to these individuals. We can kind of do whatever it is that we need. Mm-hmm. But they've also got to, go to practice. They've got to go to meetings. They've got to do their tutoring. They've got to go to their classes. And so what seems like this never-ending day gets in the way of your time to actually spend with them in the training room.
Yeah.
So I would say that's one of the challenges that you don't really think about.
Yeah. Do you get time with the athlete, or do you feel like you're juggling multiple? What's that look like when you're providing care?
I would say it's much more juggling multiple. Mm-hmm. It's much more, and it forces you to be really good at planning ahead of time.
Are you still doing that? You're such a pro. Do you still find yourself spelling that stuff out before you walk in to the athletic
Yeah.
team? Okay.
Yep.
It's really crazy. It's crazy because we recently were in-house with UMBC. And so I walk in and we're scheduling, you schedule on the 30 when you're in the athletic training room. If you're in private practice, for us, it's 45 minutes. But like you said, they come in when they can come in. I had to plan so hard. And we're talking about 12 years of experience or whatever. And still, I'm prepping like a new grad the day before, because if you want to give good care, you got to be prepared. Did you felt like that also?
Yeah, absolutely, still do. And it's interesting, you mentioned kind of like the new grad feel. I feel like as I've gone farther along, I've become more about the preparation, because I think you don't want to lose the forest for the trees, kind of a thing. You're so excited about this one session and this great exercise that I'm going to do with this person. But where does it fit into what you're trying to accomplish in that week?
Yep.
And where does that week fit into what you're trying to accomplish in that month? And then what's our big picture timeline? And that's one of the big things that's different in the college setting is everything is about when can I have this guy ready?
Sure.
There's a lot more of, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but there's a lot more of that thought process of, I need to do this safely but quickly. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the outpatient world, you don't feel that, because you're like, well, you know what, we're going to take our time and we're going to do what's right for you. But if you think big picture and then kind of work your way back, I think you need to have your plan for at least a week before you can start a session. Because if you just kind of go into it off the cuff, what are you trying to hit for that day? Is your focus, the neuroplastic side of things, movement training? Is your focus, strength development? Is your focus power development? Is it speed, linear speed, multi-directional speed? Like all of those different things could be an entire session by themselves.
Sure.
And if you go in and you try and hit a little bit of each, do you really get anything out of?
No. Tim, you don't. And this is a conversation that I have with PTs all the time. What you just described is outstanding strength and conditioning principles. And I think a great sports PT has to be an awesome strength and conditioning professional. I don't care if you have the certs. I don't care, if you went to school for it. You have to have.
You got to work with Jesse Miller.
You got to work with Jesse Miller. It's exactly what you got to do. So just call Jesse Miller. I mean, he'll teach you everything you need to know. But to your point, I don't think you get that in graduate school. Like, I think you got to make sure you that is your business. And we have to, as a profession, stop wasting people's sessions. It doesn't. It matters if they're playing for Rutgers, but when I'm treating a high schooler, it is the same thing. They want to know when they're getting back. Don't waste their session. Don't waste their money. Plan it out. What is the goal of today's session? It cannot be both speed and call it strength. It can't be, because you're going to sacrifice the one for the other. So plan it out, and I think that's what I had to work so hard on when I walk into a very busy college setting. But I think you really hit that on the head. Okay, I'm going to wind this down with our first ever lightning round. Ready, Tim?
Oh, okay.
Here we go. What is the PT school that produces the absolute best physical therapists?
I got to go with my alma mater, WashU in St. Louis.
WashU. Okay, not Rutgers?
No, I have had two really good students
Delaware?
from Rutgers. I don't think I've had any Delaware students.
Not the University of Maryland?
Oh,
what?
Maryland, that was you, right?
Okay. Your favorite Packer?
Like current or ever?
Current. By the way, there's a right answer to this.
Well, I mean, I know we initially bonded over Aaron Rodgers when he was dating, what's her name?
Who was it?
He's moving through them now, but Olivia Munn.
Yes, great call. I remember that well. How much did you like him on Rogan?
So I don't watch Rogan.
Okay,
I don't.
That makes you probably the only person. He's awesome on Rogan.
Or listen, I don't know.
He's really good on Rogan. The correct answer is Adrian Amos is the best Packer and the favorite Packer.
Is that a true sports grad?
No, I can't. That's a HIPAA violation. The Rutgers 2022 football record will be?
Good. We're excited about this year.
The best football player to ever play at Rutgers.
At Rutgers?
Yeah. At Rutgers. Who's the best Rutgers football player ever?
Baltimore Raven Ray Rice.
Okay, that is an awesome answer. I actually think it's a tie between Ray Rice and Mike Burton. Google him. He's a stud. You'll be seeing him on this podcast. But, yeah, he's right there. I like that Ray Rice pull. You did awesome on this lightning round.
Thank you.
To kind of wrap this whole thing up, if there's one thing that you want to share or you could educate on potential sports PTs getting into this elite sports realm, what is that piece of advice?
I think luck is where preparation meets opportunity. So do what you need to do to learn, to develop, to make yourself good, to make yourself better, to continue to grow. And when the right opportunity comes, take advantage of it. I think that has worked well for me. I would say I've a fairly non-traditional resume in the sense that I have moved quite a bit, but I've never really felt like I was rushing to or away from anything. It was the right fit for me at the time. And it's, worked out well for me.
Yeah, it's awesome to see where you are and what you're doing. And I really love the ability. I've had a couple Rutgers athletes come down that I've been able to work with and have just spoke volumes about what you're doing there. Even more so, the PTs that have come in contact with you see you. When I ask them who their mentors are, you mentioned some heavy hitters in your life, in your professional life, they mention you. And that's really been awesome to see. So I really appreciate your time. It has been awesome to learn about how you got there, some of the advice that you would share. If people want to find you on social media, is that your game?
Ooh, boy. Technically, yeah, but I'm more of a follower, less of a doer. I think it's Tim Sports DPT on Twitter.
I love that you don't know that. I love that.
I think Tim Sports PT on Instagram, but yeah.
But maybe not.
By the next time I come on there, I'll look that stuff up and make sure I know what I'm doing.
Okay. I absolutely love that. We are always looking for feedback. This show is designed for the sports PT. It's designed to make your career better. It's designed to help you move up in your career and also help you guys clinically with the athletes that are right in front of you. I know there are so many pearls in this conversation with Tim Machan. If you have ideas for future podcasts, if you want to hear Tim Machan again, shoot us an email, pod@truesportspt.com. We want to hear from you. What you loved, what you didn't, how we can get better. It would be just awesome to hear from the great sports PTs that are out there. Tim Machan, thank you so much.
Yoni, it's been a pleasure.